Hi guys, welcome to this video where I'll be showing you how to do some very basic integration to PPO using SQL Server Integration Services. So the first thing we're going to do is start a new project, Integration Services. And the first thing to notice is that typically you would think that you can just add a web service task to this and connect to the PPO API, but unfortunately the functionality that's provided by SQL Server Integration Services is very limited in terms of maintaining session or handling security around web services. So we have to do it with a script task. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add a data flow task to this package. I will then add a script task to the data flow task, and we're going to configure this as a source of data, and let's start configuring this. So the first thing that we need to do is just to say what the output will be from our script task. So there's our output. I'm going to just rename it to something a bit more meaningful. So we're going to be importing projects. So I'm going to call this projects. And then we're going to add some output columns. First column I'm going to do is the project name, and that will be a string. Next column we will do is the project code, which will also be a string. And that should be it. Next thing we have to do is to actually write the script which will connect to the PPO web service. So let's go ahead and do that. Now when you edit the script task, you will see that there's some boilerplate that's added for you. And the main one where we're going to be working is in this create new output rows method. So the first thing we want to do is to add a reference to our web service. So you go add service reference. Now we cannot use a normal service reference, so we're going to go advanced and add a web reference. Here where we have to type in the URL, that will be the URL pointing to the endpoint of our integration services API, so that would be www.ppolive.com / your instance name. I'm going to be connecting to a test instance, and then / in web services / integration.asmx. Okay, let's see if we got that right. And it has indeed found it. We're just going to give it a more meaningful name. PPO, say add reference. Okay, now before we start using this, we have to add a using clause. For some reason, it's not added automatically, so we're going to say using, and it will be our project name, so you will see it on here. So with the IntelliSense it actually does bring it up. .ppo, just so that we can work with our web service reference easily. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is just instantiate a new object of that reference. So it's integration. We're going to just call it service. Equals new integration. So that creates a new object that we can use to connect to our service. Since PPO uses session state to maintain the authentication, we have to add a cookie container. So we're just going to say service.cookieContainer equals new cookie container. So that will allow us to maintain session state between calls to the service. Next step that we have to do is to actually log in. So we're going to go service.login explicit, and you'll see that you need to provide a username and password. So I'm going to log in as project manager. Okay, now we should be logged in. Our next step is to now actually retrieve the data. So since PPO's API provides XML as a response, and to make it easier to work with this, I'm going to just add a reference to system.xml.link. But you can use any mechanism that you feel comfortable with. And so firstly I'm going to read this into an X element. That's our using clause. And this is going to be project information that we're retrieving. And we just need to parse it from our XML that we get from the web service. To get the XML from the web service, we're going to say service get entities, and you'll see that it requires an entity type. I want to retrieve projects, which is entity type 2. For a full list of the entity types, it is available in our API documentation. Okay, so that should call the web service, retrieve all the projects on this instance, and read it into the project's XML element. Next, we want to step through these projects and actually parse the information. So I'm going to do a for each. X element project in projects. Okay. Sorry, in projects.nodes. Okay. Now, in order to add the information to an output buffer, and you will see it in the comment below here, that we use the add row method on our output buffer, and the output buffer will be named after our output, which we call projects, which is suffixed with buffer. So the first thing is just to add a row to the output buffer. Now we call it projects buffer. There it is. Dot add row. And then we have to set the values. So we're going to say projects buffer dot project code equals, now from our XML we just want to get a specific element. In this case it's the project code. And we also want the project name. Note that the nodes that we're referencing is the field name, and it's all in lowercase. Okay, and that should be it. So I'm going to save the script, exit back to my package designer. Say OK. Now the next step that we have to do is to write this somewhere. So I'm going to add a OLADB data destination, and we're just going to connect these two. I'm going to create a new connection to the local host. So that's fine. We're going to create a new table, and we're just going to call it projects. Okay. Now let's just check our mapping. Looks correct. And now we should be able to run this. So let's have a look. So it's running and all's green, so it's looking good. So let's just quickly check our table. So we call it projects. And there we go. There's our project code and project names. I hope you found this video interesting. I will be covering more detailed aspects of this in a future video.
Learn more about PPO today by visiting us at projectportfoliooffice.com. PPO, your award-winning project management solution.